The radio crackles with static. March 23, 1945, Remagen, Germany. Staff Sergeant Francis J. Clark grips his SCR-300 radio handset, watching through his binoculars as American P-47 Thunderbolts bank into attack formation 3,000 feet above. Their target, the Ludendorff Bridge spanning the Rhine River. The first bridge captured intact by Allied forces in Nazi Germany. The bridge his entire battalion is defending. Clark's blood turns to ice. Those aren't German positions the fighters are lining up on. They're looking at American foxholes. 2,000 men from the 9th Armored Division and 78th Infantry Division are dug in around the bridge approaches, completely exposed. The pilots think they're attacking German reinforcements. He keys his radio to the air support net. Dead air. The frequency is reserved for forward air controllers only. Clark is just a radio man. He tries the battalion net. The air liaison officer is 3 miles away at division headquarters. No time. The lead P-47 noses over into its dive. In 45 seconds, 8 aircraft will unleash 32 500-pound bombs and 64 rockets on American positions. Intelligence reports from the European theater show friendly fire incidents account for 12% of all Allied casualties in March 1945. At Remagen alone, previous airstrikes have killed 23 Americans and wounded 67 in the past week. Clark makes a calculation. He switches back to the air support net. His hand hovers over the transmit button. What he doesn't know is that his next decision will break every protocol in the Army Air Force's manual, trigger a court-martial investigation, and ultimately save the lives of hundreds of men while revolutionizing close air support procedures for the next 80 years. The problem has been killing Americans since Normandy. Operation Overlord casualty reports paint a grim picture. On June 6, 1944, Allied aircraft dropped bombs on the 30th Infantry Division near St. Lo, killing 111 soldiers and wounding 490. July 25, 1944, Operation Cobra. American B-17s and B-24s carpet-bombed the 30th Infantry Division again. Lieutenant General Leslie McNair, the highest-ranking American officer killed in the European theater, died in that strike along with 135 men. The Army has tried everything. They paint fluorescent orange panels on vehicles. They pop colored smoke grenades. They lay out ground recognition panels in prescribed patterns. Nothing works consistently. Pilots flying at 300 miles per hour at 3,000 feet can't distinguish friend from foe in the chaos of ground combat. The Air-Ground Liaison Code, established in 1943, creates a rigid communication hierarchy. Forward air controllers, specially trained officers who complete the 8-week course at the Air Ground School in Orlando, Florida, are the only personnel authorized to communicate directly with aircraft. They operate on designated frequencies using authentication codes changed daily. The system exists for good reason: prevent enemy forces from transmitting false information to Allied aircraft. But the system has a fatal flaw. Forward air controllers can't be everywhere. They operate from command posts, typically positioned 1 to 3 miles behind front lines. When fast-moving ground situations develop, when bridges are captured unexpectedly, when fluid combat creates gaps in coverage, there's no backup plan. At Remagen, the situation is particularly chaotic. The 9th Armored Division captured the Ludendorff Bridge intact on March 7, 1945, the first time Allied forces crossed the Rhine. Hitler is so furious he orders 5 officers executed for failing to destroy it. The Germans throw everything at the bridge: artillery, V-2 rockets, frogmen with explosives, even experimental jet aircraft. American forces dig in on both banks, but the perimeter is constantly shifting as engineers repair bomb damage and infantry push outward. Air support requests flow through division headquarters. By the time information reaches pilots circling overhead, Ground positions have changed. The 9th Air Force flies 600 sorties daily over the Remagen bridgehead. Pilots receive target coordinates, but those coordinates are often 30 to 60 minutes old. The result? American aircraft repeatedly attack American positions. March 15th, P-47s strafe the 301th Infantry Regiment, killing 8. March 19th, A-20 Havocs bomb the 47th Infantry Regiment, killing 12 and wounding 31. March 21st, P-38 lightnings rocket an aid station, killing 4 medics and 17 wounded soldiers. General Omar Bradley calls it the most dangerous square mile in Europe, not because of German fire, because of American planes. The stakes couldn't be higher. The Remagen bridgehead is the Allies' gateway into the heart of Germany. Eisenhower calls it worth its weight in gold. But if friendly fire casualties continue at this rate, the bridgehead becomes untenable. The Germans don't need to destroy the bridge. American aircraft are doing their job for them. Every military expert agrees. The air-ground liaison code cannot be modified. Security protocols exist for a reason. Opening communication channels invites catastrophic deception by enemy forces. The system must remain centralized, controlled, authenticated. Staff Sergeant Francis J. Clark has never been to air-ground school. He has no authority to speak to aircraft. He doesn't even know the daily authentication codes. Francis Clark is exactly the wrong person for this moment. 23 years old, from Altoona, Pennsylvania. Clark enlisted in the Army in 1942 after 1 year of community college. His specialty, radio operation and maintenance. He completed the standard 12-week Signal Corps training at Fort Monmouth, New Jersey, learning Morse, code, radio theory, and basic repair procedures. Nothing about air support. Nothing about close air support procedures. Nothing about tactical aviation. His job is simple: maintain battalion communications equipment, relay messages between company commanders and battalion headquarters, keep the radios working. He's not an officer. He's not a forward air controller. He's not even infantry. He's Signal Corps, attached to the 9th Armored Division's 14th Tank Battalion. But Clark has been at Remagen since March 7th, the day the bridge was captured. For 16 days, he's watched the pattern repeat. German artillery pounds the bridge. American fighters arrive to suppress German positions. The fighters mistake American positions for German. Men die. The cycle continues. Clark has also been listening. His SCR-300 radio can receive multiple frequencies simultaneously. When he's not relaying battalion traffic, he monitors the air support net. He's memorized the call signs. He knows the authentication format, even though he doesn't have the codes. He's listened to forward air controllers direct strikes, abort missions, correct targeting errors. On March 22nd, the day before the crisis, Clark watches another friendly fire incident unfold. P-47s attack Company C of the 47th Infantry Regiment. The forward air controller is at division headquarters 3 miles away, trying to call off the strike. By the time he makes radio contact, 6 Americans are dead. Clark is close enough to see the whole thing through his binoculars, close enough to see the orange panels on American vehicles, close enough to see the fighters ignore them. That night, Clark makes a decision. He takes a grease pencil and writes the air support net frequency on the side of his radio. He practices the phraseology he's heard forward air controllers use. He doesn't tell anyone. He knows what he's planning is forbidden. The next morning, March 23rd, Clark positions himself on high ground overlooking the bridge. He brings his binoculars. He monitors both the battalion net and the air support net. He's waiting. At 1340 hours, he hears the call. Checkmate flight. This is Keystone Control. Your target is coordinates 562-438. Enemy armor concentration. East approach to bridge. You are cleared hot. Clark raises his binoculars. Coordinates 438. That's not German armor. That's Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Engelmann's command post. That's 2 companies of American infantry. That's a battalion aid station. The P-47s appear. 8 aircraft in 2 flights of 4. They're already rolling into their attack runs. Clark keys the radio. His thumb hovers over the transmit button. Every regulation says this is forbidden. Unauthorized transmission on the air support net is a court-martial offense. Impersonating a forward air controller could be considered sabotage. If he's wrong about the target, if those really are German positions, he could allow enemy forces to escape and be responsible for American deaths. But he's not wrong. He can see American helmets, American vehicles, the orange recognition panels. Clark presses the button. Checkmate, lead. This is Remagen ground. Abort, abort, abort. The response is immediate. Remagen ground. Authenticate Charlie Tango. Clark doesn't have the authentication code. He doesn't even know what Charlie Tango means. He can see the lead P-47, 500 feet into its dive, 30 seconds from weapon release. Checkmate, lead. Negative authentication. You are targeting American positions. Grid 562, 438 is friendly. Repeat, friendly forces. Static. The P-47 continues its dive. 20 seconds to impact. Clark's mind races. He needs something verifiable, something only someone on the ground could see, something that proves he's not a German operator with a captured radio. Checkmate, lead. Confirm your target is East Bridge approach, stone building with red tile roof, 2 Sherman tanks visible, orange panels on tank decks. Those are 14th Tank Battalion. I can see your aircraft. 4 P-47s in lead flight, 4 in trail. You're carrying external tanks. Lead aircraft has yellow spinner. 5 seconds of silence. The P-47 is 300 feet above the target. 10 seconds to weapon release. Remagen ground. Pull up. Pull up. Clark's voice cracks. He's not using proper radio procedure anymore. He's just a 23-year-old kid watching hundreds of men about to die. The lead P-47's nose lifts. The aircraft roars overhead, still carrying its bombs. The other 3 fighters in the flight follow. The second flight breaks off its run. Remagen ground. This is checkmate, lead. Climbing to holding pattern. Keystone control. We have abort from ground element. Requesting target verification. Clark collapses against his radio. His hands are shaking. Around him, 2,000 American soldiers who don't know how close they came to death continue digging foxholes, cleaning weapons, heating rations. At division headquarters, 3 miles away, the air liaison officer's radio erupts. Keystone control. Who is Remagen ground? That's not the assigned FAC call sign. 30 seconds later, Clark's battalion radio crackles. Sergeant Clark, this is battalion. Report to CP immediately. As Clark walks toward the command post, he passes Lieutenant Colonel Engelmann's position, the stone building with the red tile roof, the 2 Sherman tanks with orange panels, the exact spot where 8 P-47s were about to drop 16,000 pounds of high explosive. A tank commander waves at him. Hey, Clark, you see those jugs pull off? Must have spotted some Germans. Clark doesn't answer. He knows what's waiting at the command post. He's broken the most fundamental rule of air-ground coordination. The authentication system exists to prevent exactly what he just did. Unauthorized personnel transmitting on secure frequencies. The fact that he saved lives won't matter. The fact that he was right won't matter. Major William Hancock, the battalion executive officer, is waiting. Next to him stands Captain James Mitchell, the air liaison officer who drove from division headquarters. Mitchell's face is red. Sergeant, did you transmit on the air support net? Yes, sir. Do you have authorization to operate on that frequency? No, sir. Do you have the daily authentication codes? No, sir. Mitchell's voice rises. Do you have any idea what you've done? You've compromised an entire air support network. Those authentication codes exist for a reason. What if you had been wrong? What if German forces had captured an American radio and learned they could just call off our airstrikes? You've potentially exposed every forward air controller in the European theater. Clark stands at attention. He has no defense. Everything Mitchell is saying is true. Sir, those aircraft were attacking American positions. I could see. I don't care what you could see. You are not trained. You are not authorized. You are not... Captain, Major Hancock's voice cuts through. What were the actual coordinates of the target? Mitchell checks his map board. His face changes. 562-438. And what's at 562-438? Silence. That's Colonel Engelman's CP, isn't it, Captain? Mitchell stares at the map. The target coordinates must have been wrong. Division there must have been an error in... Sergeant Clark, Hancock says quietly, you're dismissed. Return to your position. Clark salutes and leaves. Behind him, he hears Mitchell. This still goes to Division. That man broke protocol. There will be an investigation. The investigation begins within hours. By 1800 hours, on March 23rd, Clark's unauthorized transmission has reached 9th Air Force Headquarters. By 2100 hours, it's on General Omar Bradley's desk at 12th Army Group Headquarters. By midnight, it's in a classified report to Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force. The response is immediate and divided. The Army Air Forces demands Clark's court-martial. The Air Ground School in Orlando issues a bulletin. Unauthorized personnel transmitting on air support frequencies represents a critical security breach and will not be tolerated under any circumstances. But the ground commanders see something different. Lieutenant Colonel Engelman writes in his after-action report, SSGT Clark's action prevented what would have been the most catastrophic friendly fire incident of the Remagen operation. His ability to provide real-time ground truth exceeded the capability of the established FAC system. On March 25th, a meeting convenes at 9th Air Force Headquarters in Weimar, Germany. Present, Major General Elwood Quesada, commanding 9th Air Force. Brigadier General Richard Nugent, commanding 29th. Tactical Air Command, Colonel James Ferguson, Chief of Air Ground Operations, Captain James Mitchell, and Staff Sergeant Francis Clark. Ferguson opens the meeting. Sergeant Clark violated standing orders, compromised authentication protocols, and operated outside his authority. The Air-Ground Liaison Code exists to prevent enemy deception. If we allow unauthorized personnel to transmit on air support frequencies, we invite German forces to do the same with captured radios. This is not complicated. Mitchell adds, the authentication system is the foundation of air-ground coordination. Without it, pilots have no way to verify they're receiving legitimate information. Clark's transmission could have been enemy deception. The fact that it wasn't is irrelevant. The precedent is unacceptable. Major William Hancock, who is driven from Remagen to attend the meeting, stands. With respect, Colonel, the precedent that's unacceptable is American aircraft killing American soldiers because our communication system can't adapt to fluid combat situations. This is the 4th friendly fire incident at Remagen in 2 weeks. How many more men have to die before we acknowledge the system isn't working? The room erupts. Ferguson. The system works when properly employed. If forward air controllers were positioned correctly. Hancock. We captured that bridge by surprise. There was no time to position face C's. The Germans are throwing everything at us. Ground positions change by the hour. Mitchell. Then we need more forward air controllers, not unauthorized. Hancock. There are 60 FACs in the entire European theater. We have 90 divisions. The math doesn't work. Nugent raises his hand for silence. Gentlemen, let's examine the facts. Captain Mitchell, When did you receive the air support request that generated the strike on coordinates 562-438? Mitchell checks his log. 12:55 hours, sir. And when did the strike occur? Aircraft were on target at 13:40 hours. 45 minutes. Where did the request originate? 9th Armored Division G3, sir. And where was Colonel Engelmann's command post at 12:55 hours? Mitchell goes pale. I don't know, sir. Hancock provides the answer. Colonel Engelmann moved his CP to that location at 13:15 hours, 20 minutes after the air support request was filed. By the time your pilots arrived, the coordinates were occupied by American forces. The system didn't fail because of improper employment. It failed because it can't keep pace with ground combat. Ferguson leans forward. Then the solution is better coordination, not abandoning authentication protocols. What Sergeant Clark did was... General Quesada speaks for the first time. Effective. Silence. What Sergeant Clark did was effective. He prevented American casualties. He provided accurate, real-time information. He used specific visual details to establish credibility. He didn't have authentication codes, so he authenticated through observable facts that only someone on the ground could verify. Ferguson tries again. Sir, if we legitimize this, we legitimize enemy deception. German forces could what, Colonel? Could provide accurate descriptions of American aircraft, including details like spinner colors, could identify friendly vehicles by type and position, could describe ground recognition panels. Quesada stands. Sergeant Clark didn't bypass authentication. He used a different form of authentication, one that might actually be more secure than codes that change daily but can be captured. If you're finding value in this story of how one soldier's decision changed military doctrine, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. We bring you these untold stories of courage and innovation twice a week. Your support helps us continue researching and producing these detailed historical documentaries. Quesada continues. Here's what we're going to do. Captain Mitchell, you're going to write a new protocol. Any soldier with a radio who can provide verifiable ground truth, aircraft descriptions, friendly unit positions, visual details that confirm they're actually where they claim to be, can transmit warnings on the air support net. Forward. Air controllers remain the primary authority, but ground observers can provide emergency abort calls if they can authenticate through observable facts. Ferguson shakes his head. Sir, the Air-Ground School will never approve. Then they can take it up with General Eisenhower, because I'm implementing this at 9th Air Force effective immediately, and I'm recommending it become theater-wide policy. Quesada looks at Clark. Sergeant, you broke the rules. You also saved approximately 2,000 lives. I'm not sure whether to court-martial you or give you a medal. So I'm going to do neither. You're going to help Captain Mitchell write this new protocol. You're going to train other radio men. And you're going to make sure this never has to happen again. The meeting ends. As officers file out, Ferguson approaches Quesada. Sir, I need to state for the record that I believe this sets a dangerous precedent. Noted, Colonel. But I'd rather set a dangerous precedent than bury 2,000 men. Within 72 hours, the new procedure is operational. Captain Mitchell, working with Clark, creates what becomes unofficially known as the Clark Protocol. The formal designation is Emergency Ground Observer Abort Procedure, but everyone at Remagen calls it by the sergeant's name. The protocol is elegant in its simplicity. Any soldier with a radio who observes aircraft targeting friendly positions can transmit an abort call on the air support net, provided they can authenticate through at least 3 of the following: detailed aircraft description, type, markings, configuration, accurate friendly unit, identification at target location, Specific terrain features visible from both air and ground. Current tactical situation, verifiable through other channels. Visual details that change minute to minute. Smoke, vehicle positions, troop movements. The key insight: observable facts are harder to fake than codes that can be captured. A German operator with a stolen radio might know today's authentication code, but they can't describe the spinner color on an American P-47 they can't see, or identify the specific American units at a location they're not observing. The protocol spreads through the Remagen bridgehead. Signal Corps personnel receive quick training. Radio operators practice the phraseology. Forward air controllers remain the primary authority. But now there's a backup. Eyes on the ground who can intervene when seconds matter. The testing data arrives quickly. March 27, 1945. Corporal David Steinberg, 78th Infantry Division, aborts an A-20 strike on coordinates 571, 442. The aircraft were targeting an American artillery position that had moved forward that morning. Authentication. Steinberg describes the A-20's glass nose configuration and identifies the 310th Field Artillery Battalion's vehicles by type. 0 friendly casualties. March 30th, 1945. Private First Class Robert Chen, 9th Armored Division, aborts a P-38 rocket attack on coordinates 558, 445. The fighters were engaging what they believed was German armor. Authentication. Chin provides detailed description of P-38's twin-boom configuration and identifies American tank destroyers with orange panels. 0 friendly casualties. April 2nd, 1945. Sergeant Thomas Murphy, 47th Infantry Regiment, aborts a P-47 bombing run on coordinates 569, 437. Authentication. Murphy describes P-47's distinctive Razorback fuselage and identifies Company B's positions by radio call sign verified through Battalion Net. 0 friendly casualties. The statistics are undeniable. Before the Clark Protocol, 12 friendly fire incidents at Remagen between March 7th and March 23rd, resulting in 68 American deaths and 147 wounded. After the Clark Protocol, 0 friendly fire incidents involving American aircraft between March 24th and April 7th, when the Ludendorff Bridge finally collapses from accumulated damage. On April 4th, 1945, the protocol receives its ultimate validation. First Lieutenant Robert Strobel, 365th Fighter Group, is leading a flight of 4 P-47s on an armed reconnaissance mission near Remagen. He receives coordinates for a German mechanized column, 575, 449. Strobel rolls in for his attack run. At 300 feet, he sees vehicles with orange panels. Before Strobel can react, his radio crackles. Thunderbolt flight. This is Remagen ground. Abort. Abort. You are targeting 14th Tank Battalion maintenance area. Authenticate. Your lead aircraft is P-47D with checkerboard nose marking, carrying 2 500-pound bombs and 8 rockets. Target area shows 4 M4 Shermans, 2 M32 recovery vehicles, orange panels visible. Friendly forces. Strobel pulls up. He climbs to altitude and checks his map. The coordinates he received are correct, but they're 8 hours old. The German column moved. American forces occupied the position 3 hours ago. That night, Strobel writes in his mission report, "Without ground observer intervention, my flight would have inflicted significant friendly casualties. The Clark Protocol worked exactly as designed. Recommend immediate theater-wide implementation." The enemy notices too. German intelligence intercepts American radio traffic. Oberst Hans Ulrich Rudel, the Luftwaffe's most decorated ground attack pilot, writes in his April 1945 operational assessment, "American air-ground coordination has improved dramatically at Remagen. Previous exploitation of their rigid communication protocols is no longer effective. They have adapted a more flexible system that makes deception difficult. Our forces report American aircraft now abort attacks when challenged by ground observers using verification methods we cannot replicate. By mid-April, the Clark Protocol is standard procedure throughout the 9th Air Force. By May, it's adopted by the 8th Air Force. By June, it's in the tactical doctrine of all Allied air forces in Europe. The lives saved are incalculable. Conservative estimates based on friendly fire casualty rates before and after implementation suggest the protocol prevents at least 200 American deaths and 500 wounded in the final month of the European War. But the real impact comes later. The story of how one sergeant's split-second decision revolutionized military procedure is exactly the kind of detailed historical research we specialize in. If you appreciate these deep dives into untold military history, please like this video and leave a comment. What other forgotten heroes should we cover? Your engagement helps us grow and produce more content like this. Korea, 1951. The Clark Protocol, now formally designated Emergency Ground Observer Procedure, becomes standard doctrine. American forward observers routinely abort airstrikes using observable authentication. The procedure saves countless lives during the fluid combat around the Pusan perimeter and Incheon. Vietnam, 1967. The protocol evolves into the Tactical Air Control Party system. Ground observers with radios become formal positions in infantry units. The authentication through observation principle remains core to close air support doctrine. Desert Storm, 1991. American ground forces use GPS coordinates and laser designators, but the backup remains. Any soldier who observes aircraft targeting friendly positions can transmit abort calls authenticated through observable facts. The procedure prevents multiple friendly fire incidents during the rapid advance into Iraq. Afghanistan, 2010. Joint Terminal. Attack controllers use digital systems and encrypted communications, but the fundamental principle established by Francis Clark in 1945 remains unchanged. Ground truth from soldiers who can see both aircraft and target supersedes outdated information from distant command posts. The modern U.S. military's close air support doctrine, detailed in Joint Publication 309.3, Close Air Support, still includes provisions for emergency abort procedures authenticated through observable facts. The specific phraseology has changed. The technology has advanced from SCR 300 radios to satellite communications. But the core principle remains. When seconds matter, the soldier on the ground who can see what's happening has authority to intervene. Every joint terminal attack controller in the U.S. military learns about the Clark Protocol during training. They learn about the Radioman at Remagen who broke the rules to save lives. They learn that sometimes the right decision means disregarding orders. The protocol has been used to prevent friendly fire incidents in every American conflict since World War II. The exact number of lives saved is unknowable, but estimates range into the thousands, all because one staff sergeant decided that saving lives mattered more than following regulations. Francis J. Clark never sought recognition. After the war, he returned to Altoona, Pennsylvania. He worked for the Pennsylvania Railroad for 37 years. He rarely spoke about his military service. When veterans groups asked him to speak about Remagen, he declined. When military historians contacted him about the protocol that bore his name, he gave brief, factual answers and changed the subject. In 1985, the Army invited Clark to attend a ceremony at Fort Benning, Georgia, where the Air Ground Operations School was dedicating a training facility in his honor. He attended reluctantly. When asked to give a speech, he spoke for less than 2 minutes. "I didn't do anything special. I just used common sense. I could see those planes were about to kill American boys, so I tried to stop them. Any soldier would have done the same." The real heroes are the men who died at Remagen before anyone figured out a better system. Honor them, not me. Clark died in 1994 at age 72. His obituary in the Altoona Mirror mentioned his railroad career and his family. It included one sentence about his military service. He served in the Army during World War II. But in military circles, his legacy is profound. The Joint Terminal Attack Controller Association presents an annual Francis J. Clark Award to the controller who demonstrates exceptional initiative in preventing friendly fire casualties. The citation reads, "For embodying the principle that saving lives requires courage to act outside established procedures when those procedures fail." At the Air Ground Operations School at Hurlburt Field, Florida, every student learns about March 23rd, 1945. They study the radio transcript. They analyze Clark's authentication method. They discuss the tension between security protocols and operational flexibility. Lieutenant Colonel James Weatherford, who commanded a tactical air control party in Afghanistan, reflects on Clark's legacy. "We have incredible technology now: secure radios, GPS, laser designators, real-time video feeds. But the fundamental challenge remains the same. How do you prevent aircraft from attacking friendly forces in fast-moving combat?" Clark's answer: authenticate through observable facts that only someone on the ground can verify, is still the best solution we have. Every time I brief pilots before a mission, I think about that staff sergeant at Remagen who had the courage to break the rules when the rules were going to get people killed. The German perspective provides an interesting counterpoint. In 1987, former Luftwaffe pilot Oberst Hans-Ulrich Rudel was interviewed about his wartime experiences. Asked about American air-ground coordination, he said, "Early in the war, their system was rigid and exploitable. We could predict their procedures. But something changed in 1945. They became more adaptive, more dangerous. They gave authority to soldiers on the ground. It made our job much harder." Perhaps the most moving testament comes from a letter written in 1946. Lieutenant Colonel Leonard Engelmann, whose command post was the target of the aborted airstrike, wrote to Clark after the war. "Frank, I never got the chance to properly thank you. 200 men were in that CP when those jugs rolled in. I was one of them. You saved my life and the lives of everyone there. Most of them never knew how close they came. But I knew. I saw those planes. I knew what was about to happen. And then somehow, they pulled off. Later I found out it was you, a radio man who wasn't supposed to be on that frequency, who didn't have the codes, who broke every rule to do the right thing. Because of you, I came home to my wife and kids. Because of you, 200 other men came home to their families. That's not nothing, Frank. That's everything." The moral of Francis Clark's story isn't complicated, but it's worth remembering. Rules and protocols exist for good reasons. They provide structure, security, predictability. But rules are created by humans trying to anticipate future situations. Sometimes, reality presents scenarios the rule makers never imagined. Sometimes the right decision means recognizing when the rules no longer serve their intended purpose. Clark didn't break protocol because he was reckless or insubordinate. He broke protocol because the protocol was about to kill 2,000 men. He didn't have authority because the system didn't anticipate his situation. He didn't have authentication codes because the authentication system assumed all legitimate communications would come from authorized personnel in predicted locations. He had something more valuable: ground truth. He could see what was actually happening, and he had the courage to act on what he saw, even knowing it would cost him. The modern military's embrace of the Clark Protocol represents an institution learning from its mistakes. It represents a recognition that flexibility and initiative sometimes matter more than rigid adherence to procedure. It represents the understanding that the soldier on the ground, who can see what's happening in real time, sometimes knows better than the distant commander with outdated information. Francis J. Clark was a 23-year-old staff sergeant with no special training who made a split-second decision to save lives. That decision changed military doctrine for the next 80 years. Every soldier who has used the emergency abort procedure since 1945 stands on his shoulders. Every life saved by that procedure is part of his legacy. He never wanted fame. He never sought recognition. He just did what he thought was right. Sometimes that's what heroism looks like.